Welcome back to another Cohiba Bay video. We're back in our city inspired by St. Petersburg, and it finally has a name, so I no longer need to refer to it as that city across the bay. Based on the results of the poll for my channel, we will now be referring to the city as St. Alexander, which I think is a very appropriate name for a coastal city based off of St. Pete. Thanks to all of you who voted, and a special shout out to Sean Morrow 3097 who suggested the name. Today's going to be more of a detailing episode, and we'll be picking up where we left off last time. Last episode we created this little marina by dragging some elevated pedestrian paths and plopping a couple of industrial buildings, but we very much left it in an unfinished state. So we'll be spending some time here, as well as other parts of the waterfront. My goal is to completely redevelop the waterfront area, and hopefully develop some of our downtown. We've got a lot of ground to cover, so let's see what we can get accomplished this episode. Now that we've established a couple cities in the region, I felt it was a good time to start drawing out some district boundaries across Cohiba Bay. I started with St. Alexander, then I moved over to the city of Cohiba, then identified various districts within Cohiba, including Cohiba Heights, our historical neighborhood, and the future port of Cohiba, which will one day be a major shipping hub. Next I started looking at the marina we created last episode, and tried to figure out what was missing. The most obvious answer is that it's missing boats, but we'll likely have to wait until custom assets become available before we can address that issue. But besides boats, one of the first things I noticed is that the marina is missing breakwaters, which help to block offshore currents from penetrating areas where boats would be docked. So I started creating my own by dragging out shallow strips of land, covering them with rocks and sparse vegetation. After creating the breakwaters, I started detailing the marina itself. The goal wasn't to create anything fancy, but just break up some of the monotony by adding custom surfaces, trees, props, and some decals. I decided to add one more feature to the marina, a public boat ramp. These are pretty common at marinas, and for people who don't permanently store their boat at the marina, it gives them a place to launch their boat into the water. To create it, I extended some land out a bit, I placed some custom piers on both sides, then used the slope terrain tool to create a smooth downward angle all the way into the water. Finally, I covered the ramp with a concrete surface and added some decals to give the appearance that it's had some usage. With Marina mostly finished, I set my sights on the downtown area next and decided to work on the city block here. I didn't want to go all out with building high-rises yet since St. Alexander is a relatively new city, but I did think it could benefit from a couple of skyline enhancing assets. First, I rearranged some of the previous buildings using Move It. Then I added a couple of high-rise condos that I think fit really well here. The first condo is a signature building from the Eastern European pack. Next, I used a high-density residential tower from the China pack. I wasn't sold on it at first, but I adjusted the colors to give it a classic pink Florida look, and I realized, hey, this actually works pretty good. Next, I got to work and started filling in all the space between the buildings. I gave the condo a dedicated parking garage, then added a modern-looking office building next to it. Finally, I added parking and detailed the middle of the city block using custom surfaces and some of the new curb net lanes that were released by Elgendo 87. For the next phase of development, I decided to focus a little bit more on the bayfront here. I wanted to create a nice bayfront street with some mixed-use zoning. I had originally placed some row houses to act as a placeholder, but it was time to redevelop. I found some mixed-use buildings from the Japan pack that were exactly what I was picturing in my head, so I placed some of these. Then I added another mixed-use apartment complex from the Urban Promenades DLC. Then, I spent a little time adding some detail to the empty spaces and refining the shoreline by using elevated pedestrian paths as a key wall. After establishing this little stretch of shoreline, I started to get a clear picture of how St. Alexander's waterfront will look in the future. This green space here was fun while it lasted, but this is some valuable real estate, and it was time to redevelop it into something more profitable. I used elevated pedestrian pathways to continue our quay wall, and created a canal for no other reason than I thought it looked cool. I added some street side parking using the parking lot roads, and added a few more mixed-use condos from the Japan pack. These assets really are perfect for coastal Florida builds. Next, I tried to figure out what to build on this corner here. Since it's surrounded by water on two sides, I wanted to build something kind of large or, significant, and I found this signature office building. In my head, I decided it would serve as some sort of marine research lab, and its location right on the coast makes a lot of sense to me. think this marine research lab turned out nicely, and it's the perfect fit for this corner of land here. Now let's focus on the rest of the undeveloped land. I definitely want to build a nice apartment complex somewhere here, but I also want to preserve a little bit of park space to leave some nice areas for the Sims to catch some fresh air. I started by placing one of these tiny city parks in the space between the new condos and research lab. This little park is perfect for filling in areas where you don't want to zone any buildings. Next, I spliced together two corner buildings from the Urban Promenades pack to build some modern looking luxury apartments. These assets come with this raised deck in the back, and I thought it'd be cool to turn it into a poolside deck area. I used Move It to add some random pool and patio props, then added some bushes and palm trees. Behind the apartment complex, I did something a little different and added a small walkable nature preserve. The reason I did this at first was to cover up some jankiness between the terrain and the quay wall, but I think it's a cool idea to preserve some of the natural vegetation that would have been along the coastline before it got developed. After building this preserve, I decided to create a little plaza area where people can hang out and soak in some nice views of the bay. We're going to continue our progress on the waterfront by doing something different with this patch of green space. This stretch of coastline is right at the end of our main street, so I want to add some signature features to it. I want to add another marina, but I also want to take some inspiration from the St. Pete Pier. The pier is a landmark area in downtown St. Pete and attracts lots of tourists and residents alike due to its location on the water, but also because of its attractions, food, and park areas. We're going to do something similar here. I want to have a long pathway that juts out into the bay, and I definitely want to incorporate lots of parks, green space, and some attractions. Let's see what we're able to come up with. So we've got a basic foundation in place for this waterfront project. So far, we've got a pier that juts out from the downtown, and at the end you have a luxury restaurant with waterfront views. It's a bit of a walk from the parking area, but with the park areas and nice foliage lining the pier, it'd be a pretty scenic walk, especially during golden hour when the sun is setting. Now I'm focusing a bit on this park area at the front of the pier. I used a lot of the mini parks here. It's a quick way to place detailed bench areas, but they also add the benefit of a park space that the Sims will actually use. So the idea is that the area will add a lot of land value and also boost tourism, hopefully. I'm hoping to see a lot of Sims here once the entire area has expanded a bit in population. I also have one addition I'm planning on adding to the base of the pier that I think would be a really cool area in real life, but we'll get to that later. For now, back to the detailing. With the park mostly finished, I decided to work on this area of land right next to it. I wanted it to be a nice natural area with plenty of green space and an artificial beach. In the end, I think it ends up turning into a pretty cool little park area. There aren't any attractions like restaurants, but it's a nice little slice of paradise within what I believe will become a bustling area in the future. I mentioned earlier there was another attraction I wanted to add to the area at the front of the pier, and that attraction is going to be a floating water park. I believe this asset is called Quays and Piers by Washi776, and it can be found on Paradox Mods. It's a pretty cool water park, and has a big pool, spiral water slides, and some hangout areas scattered throughout the park. It also has concession stands built into repurposed shipping containers, which I think is a pretty nice touch. With the floating water park added, the waterfront redevelopment is pretty much finished, but there is one last piece that needs to be added. I mentioned I wanted to add a marina, and since I originally said that, I've actually stumbled across some really exciting marina assets from Harbor Master Jay, who's a pretty well-known asset creator from City Skylines 1 and 2. I found these from one of Infrastructurist's recent videos, where he also redeveloped the waterfront area in his New England-style city. The marina assets come with some realistic looking custom piers, walkways, and quay walls, and while I was down the rabbit hole, I also found that Harbor Master Jay had released a couple of boat assets. He did a really awesome job of taking random props from the base game and turning them into some decent looking boats. With the creation of these new pier and boat assets, we can finally create a marina that not only looks realistic, but actually has boats, which are sort of an integral part of marinas. It's exciting to have these assets for our new marina, but it also means that we can go back and make the original marina look a lot better. Yeah, the addition of custom piers and boats made a pretty big difference, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. With the marina being redone for the second time now, I think that should just about do it for this episode. The waterfront has been successfully redeveloped into an area that is befitting for a coastal town that will be built on tourism, and I can't wait to keep growing this city. I haven't forgotten about the city of Cohiba though, which hasn't gotten a lot of love lately, but will still remain the largest city in Cohiba Bay. Next episode we'll be returning to Cohiba, where I'm hoping to grow the city more and really start to give the downtown its own identity. As always, thank you for tuning in, and enjoy the cinematics. See ya!